Hey guys, Chris here from Boxing Brothers Online Coaching, and today I'm going to run you through some hot tips to keep in mind when you're doing your shadow boxing. So tip number one is going to be how you start your round. If you're fortunate enough to have a ring, access to a ring, you want to be starting from the corner. And if you don't have access to a ring and you're just visualizing that ring, make sure you visualize starting from that corner. So you want to position yourself in a way so that when that bell goes, you visualize making your way to the center of the ring with your hands up, your elbows in, your chin down, and make sure you're always first. Try to get that jab out first and get to the center of the ring as quick as you possibly can, but not rushing forward. So whenever you're starting your round, visualize coming out of that corner, ding, ding, the bell goes, you make your way to the center tight guard, and you get that jab out and that head moving, and those feet on the go as soon as you possibly can. Try not to be bullied out of that center. Just try to move to the left or the right to avoid going back and ending up back into that corner or up against the ropes. Once you've started your round and you've established yourself into the middle of the ring and you're trying to possess that center of the ring, you want to have a ring awareness. You want to know exactly where you are in the ring and where you should be going and where you want to avoid allowing your opponent to take you. So as you're moving around, you want to be favoring either the left or right according to whether your opponent is southpaw or orthodox. So if I was up against an orthodox opponent, I'm going to try to move around to my right to stay away from their power hand being their right. Or if they're a southpaw boxer, I'm going to move around to my left to stay away from their power hand, their left hand. And just be aware where the corners are, where the ropes are, where you might be drawing a little bit closer or further away to, and visualize pressuring your opponent forward up against the ropes and receiving that pressure. And constantly being aware exactly where you are in the ring at that time and constantly trying to repossess the center and visualizing ways to repossess that center using your attacks, your defenses, your footwork, and having general all-round ring awareness. So you've made it into the center of the ring. You've established yourself in the center, you've been first, you've gotten that jab out, you're moving around, you're absolutely aware where you are, where the corners are, etc., where your opponent's trying to put you. You've determined where their feet are, what their stance is, etc. Now, you want to not only be delivering punches, but you want to visualize the receiving of punches. Far too often, we get caught up throwing those punches. We just want to be busy with the hands. But the reality is, we will be receiving punches. And you need to stimulate that in your shadow boxing. So as you're moving around that ring, and you're getting your punches going, make sure you're getting your head off the center, you're using your parry, you're using your guard in all of your defensive maneuvers, and then furthermore countering eventually. But don't get caught up shadow punching. Make sure you're shadow boxing. Navigating your way around the ring and truly visualizing what it would be like being in a fight and receiving those punches. Okay, next, you don't want to be overly favorable to visualizing just one circumstance. Okay, so oftentimes when we get caught up shadow boxing, we like to just kind of move forward and pressure and throw punches and kind of pivot out and then keep moving and move forward and pivot out and then whatever's comfortable. Don't get caught up doing what's comfortable, what makes you feel good. Because more often than not, your opponent isn't going to allow you to do the things that make you feel good in the ring. You need to move around and try to stimulate every single circumstance as possible. Imagine being pressured and trying to defend yourself, moving backwards and then ending up on the ropes and having to fight off the ropes. Imagine moving backwards and punching backwards. Imagine having your opponent in the corner or up against the ropes. Every single situation you need to reflect on. If you've had more sparring and boxing experience, it's going to be easier to do so because you have those experiences to reflect on and then transfer into your shadow boxing. If you haven't done much boxing, watching boxing is a great way to do it because you can watch, you can see all the different dynamics that the opponent shared together and you can try to stimulate and emulate those when you're doing your shadow boxing. And last but not least, don't switch off. This is by far one of the most frustrating issues that I see that is very common amongst many of my students and shadow boxing in general. You see a boxer moving around, they're shadow boxing, they're very focused, the hands are up, the elbows in, the chin's down, they're throwing punches, and then wherever it is they're shadow boxing, they might run out of room, so they might end up against the ropes, and then they'll just drop their hands, turn around, and just look for more room to shadow box. Or as they're shadow boxing, they might, for whatever reason, lose their train of thought, or they're not sure what to do, they're trying to plan what to throw next, whatever it may be, and they'll drop their hands, think about what they're going to do, and then keep throwing. You can't do that in the fight, so don't do it in the shadow boxing because whatever habits you take in shadow boxing and on the bag and etc., you'll do it in the ring as well. You drop your hands whenever you want to process information or you run out of ideas or you run out of room or whatever it may be. If you want to think about what to do next, put your hands up, put your elbows in, your chin down and just move your feet and process that information in that composed boxing stance. If you run out of room in the space that you're doing it, use it as an opportunity. If I end up, moving backwards and end up backed up against the ropes or facing the ropes and right out of the room, don't just turn around and then keep shadow. Imagine you've got your opponent up against the ropes and you're trying to keep them there. They're trying to fight their way off the ropes, etc. Make use of every single situation and do not switch off. It's very difficult to maintain that concentration for 3 minutes. When you're shadowboxing, it's a great way to exercise the focus muscle, which often gets underutilized in these kind of things. In your shadowboxing, from one bell to the next, do not switch off. Keep that mental focus. Thanks for tuning into this video, guys. I hope it was informative and helps you out in your shadowboxing. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment in below. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah.
Got carried away.